Welcome to a late evening episodic journey.
An always strikes late episode, if you will.
Once again, recording and coming to you sort of on schedule, even if we are missing our third co-host, Miles, because he is somewhere in the sky or perhaps landed on his way here to Boston.
He is not a bird or a plane, just a Miles. But
So Miles.
wherever the Miles is, he be Milesing, right?
Yes, but possibly slightly closer to home here than usual. But
Indeed.
yes, indeed. So we're keeping the momentum here, everyone out there, so we can, have a nice chat and make sure to deliver you something good on time. But we'll be back to our regular trio next time.
Yep. And got quite a bit of interesting things going on. Part of the reasoning here that Miles is on his sabbatical from the podcast is he's coming to a tournament that we'll be talking about in a sec. But
That's absolutely right. This is sort of like a bit of a tourney focused episode, at least in part. I think Matt, you had a hawk one, recently to talk about, and of course Miles is coming here to Boston, so that he and I can attend the Everwinter GT in person, put on by the lovely Wicked Dicey folks, and hopefully win a few games or at least have a lot of fun with 5 new friends.
So fancy. Oh, yeah. Well, on our side of the continent, I just finished running a GT up in Ocean Shores. We had a little bit of a turnout drop, so I wouldn't call it a natural GT, but all around pretty good. We did some experimentation this time, and I know I've talked about it in the Discord, which links are in the description. Go join Patreon. All the fun stuff.
Go forth.
It's always strikes late, and we're tired of being late, but not last. There's my slogan. I'm going with the slogan now.
Higher zany content tonight. Maybe just as funny. We'll find out. But
yeah, more coffee at the break of evening. So the tournament went well. I know I was talking about it in our Discord quite a bit, and had asked a bunch of players to kind of give me feedback on it, and it was great because we had a couple of casual players, and then some heavy hitters from the region in the Dimensional Cascade group or club, who all of them are just excellent players, very meticulous, know their rules, and are just very good, right?
Excellent. Well, Matt, how big was it at the end of the day? I guess you said it was a bit of a turnout drop, but what are we talking about here? What was the
we were supposed to be at 15 at the start that had signed up. We had 25 actual wanting to be there, and then it just kind of drained out when I think everybody realized it was going to be winter on the sea. So it was a little bit interesting in that we weren't expecting much for the time of year, but we had a lot of really late drops, which was surprising, especially because I was making this terrain for quite a few more tables than I actually had to. But the terrain itself was fun, and that ended up being kind of the highlight for me of the tournament. I ended up even having to be the buy, actually, so that nobody showed up for nothing, which is kind of fun. I brought a Gloom Spike Gets Spider list that I literally just bring once a year. However the rules change, they change.
Gotcha. The bleeding edge of competitive right there.
Yeah. And actually placed middle of the pack, which was a little strange. So it was not what I really wanted to be doing with a buy army, right? Normally just come up, beat this person down so you can have a game. Give them a little bit of struggle, but it went on too much, I think. But anyways, the main draw for me for this and the main fun was the terrain. I went ahead and built kind of standardized
Hmm.
terrain,
Hmm.
so that each table would have, all terrain bases were the same size. Was really inspired by the nation's crew, when they were putting that PDF together for their tournament that they had, back in Ireland just a little bit ago, that we had
Yep.
on
Yep.
here. And so I was like, okay, well, what's one of the things that we see around this area a lot? And that's, giant garrisons that can take up far too much of the table because that's all the terrain you have, and people making decisions that can generally not be as fair, I think, when the choice between attacker and defender is really just the roll of a dice, right? So the
Hmm.
idea
Hmm.
behind it was to standardize all pieces of terrain and placement, which was custom for each map. Each map terrain placement was unique. Um, and then to make sure that we were mirroring the effects of Mystic.
Like the terrain dice. Okay.
Yeah, the terrain dice. And so that ended up being, quite a bit of fun. Garrisons weren't as insanely effective as they are with larger pieces on the table. They then became like a support piece as opposed to, here's my main strategy. I'm going to hop these garrisons to get right, 24 inches across the table in one go. Which I know made some people sad, but also they were like, well, this is probably a little bit more fair. um,
I can definitely see that.
yeah, and I think it kind of leveled the playing field quite a bit. There was the I think one of the things that I saw the most was that people were really excited not to have to do any setup. They could just go sit at the table and start their game, right?
I think there's honestly something to that. Like if it's really preset, don't worry about it, don't move it. This is it, little character full. That's
Mm-hmm.
15, 20 minutes you sometimes get back. Just like having to fuss around to that, and yeah, it's even better, if that terrain map is balanced so that it's not gonna be like a real puzzler.
Yeah, and it was fun too because I think the missions that I gave were not ones that I've been seeing a lot in our area. So missions for this were no reward without risk, the frigid zephyr, spring the
Hmm.
trap, every step is forward, and lines of communication. So not too standard, not too hard. Put a nice variation where there were tricks that you could do on each of them, and terrain wasn't going to get too much in the way of that anymore. Um, so it felt like, we were setting up that inadvertent joy of not having to have 20 minutes for setup by wanting to make sure that everybody had a level playing field. You know, too often I've heard on one table or another somebody talking about their game afterwards, like that piece of terrain on that one board, if it was not there, I would have been able to make this charge, or they wouldn't have been able to trap me in something.
Oh yeah,
And
there's always that, or someone's flying like an Archeon, and the
mhm,
configuration means they can't put their base anywhere or something like that.
yeah,
So just it creates like these natural moments, and those can be fun, I think, sometimes because that's where like you can build a strategy around what you found there, but also it turns like a luck of the dice in a dice game, right? Ironically,
yeah,
kind of moment, around whether or not you can win or lose, like in a critical matchup, especially across 5 games where you might run into something like that.
yeah. And it can be like a negative play experience, or even just a non-interactive
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was happy that it succeeded in everybody being pretty good with it. There were some people like, oh, you know, I want my terrain to do more, and then so took the feedback about halfway through, and then kind of made little mazes on, what was it? Every step is forward,
Mm-hmm.
which yeah, which immediately put a lot of people in like, oh man, he did exactly what I wanted. Now this game is way harder. And they were happy about it. So it was a great learning experience of, what we can do with standardized terrain in this area for myself on future tournaments. But also, like, it was really good to see, like, even with the extra time it took me to set it up, it
Hmm.
meant that
Hmm.
there were no real questions asked, right? Everybody rolls up, they see the terrain there. Oh, and the other thing, the terrain was mirrored. So if you rolled a dice for one piece of terrain, the exact opposite sides piece of terrain would have that same rule. So there was no reason to move across the table or to force your opponent to get up and go to the other side.
Because the mystical, the arcane happen to
Mm-hmm.
be over there. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking
So
about.
it was exactly mirrored. And then what is it? Defender could choose where to put those on those mirrored pieces. So that was kind of the leeway I was trying to give for them to
Hmm.
feel a little bit more comfortable. In the end, like, your list is going to dictate who goes first. So if you feel bad about the rolls and there's two people with the same amount of drops and one person wins, chooses to be an attacker, the defender can actually still have a little bit of interaction as well. So it felt really balanced when we were rolling through it. I was really, really happy with
Nice.
the results. So
Well, that
yeah.
sounds like a true delight. I'm glad it went pretty well. Fun to win at least a few games of the Spider Pack too. And that was a 2-dayer you did, right? It was like a
Yeah.
full. Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, I was this close to, like, not having to play and being the nice lazy TO, even though I, like, went out and bought, like, everybody cupcakes and stuff. But, like, I was so close to not being not being on my feet all day.
You were forced to rise to the
So
occasion.
close.
Pick up your wicker shield and your foresty spear and your chittering mountain.
And
Get on
just
after it.
that's the noise that we figured out the spiders make as they go. It's the very close to a rabbit for some reason, but
they're like rabbits,
yeah,
maybe.
terrifying multi-legged rabbits.
Maybe a little
Um,
burrow.
yeah, they're a lot. They're a lot. I'm surprised I actually don't see that many spiders because they do well on the battle tactics. They do very well on the battle tactics.
I think the spider army is definitely one I can see you enjoying, because it's not bad. It's just not the common pick, which makes it way more fun to play. Honestly
Yeah.
do think there's a lot of utility in that, as well as maybe just kind of like enjoyment.
Well,
I just find that the
the amount
case.
of movement shenanigans that it has too is surprising. So, like, when I when I built the list, um, I was building it for the pre-Gloomspite Gets release or the
Hmm.
new Gloomspite Gets, and so I was just kind of retrofitting it. And I was like, oh, there's a hero phase movement. Cool, we'll throw that on there. Oh, there's Ragnarok suddenly can teleport. All of this other stuff, and I was like, this is like the new Beast of Chaos for me. This is amazing.
That's
So
honestly pretty great.
yeah,
You
so
gotta give that.
yeah, it was ending up to be a lot of fun, but probably too strong of an army for a buy army, I think.
Well,
A
see,
little bit
there's an
less
interesting
challenge.
philosophy around that. I mean, it's sort of the question of, do you want your buy to be like a pushover? Is it meant to be like a gimme win, like you know, like the door prize, or is it meant to be like a decent challenge? I actually do agree with the notion that you want it to be a decent challenge. I mean, it's nice if you win your buy game, but I don't think you want to feel at the end of it like, it was clubbing a seal or something like that.
Yeah, and there were some situations where it really felt like I had turned some I'd pulped a seal, essentially, for a couple of them. A couple of the engagements that I got into, but, like, for me, it's like, yeah, I don't want to give somebody an easy game, but I do want to give myself a harder game if I'm playing a buy. And the fact that the
I
battle
think that's
tactics are
fair.
so easy, it meant that, like, more than half of the games I had almost nothing left on the board, but I was winning in battle tactics.
That's
So,
such
or
a
grand
such a factor
strategy.
right now. I mean, just like first creating a list that can do that,
Hmm.
get your 5 battle tactics, and then that's down to the primary after that. But if you can just get those out of the way with the number of options across the books or the armies of renown or or that current GHB, you're golden. And then it's
Yeah.
like a really different sort of situation than if they were all questionable.
Yeah, and it probably didn't help that I've suddenly like flipped the switch back to being like, okay, I want to play competitive again next season. So like I was already in that mindset too. So
It's
sorry
it's the right
guys.
it's the right way, to grind that axe, get honed.
Yeah,
Well, I
but
guess,
yeah, pretty good.
that's excellent. Well, I guess, so one tournament down, and then, Miles and I will charge forth and try to represent the glorious name of Always Strikes Last, somewhat, well, hopefully not dead last, but, like in a befitting manner. It'll be,
We can call it always strikes late for that point in time, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, we're
but
not at our sharpest today. I hope we'll be our sharpest on Saturday, but it's pretty fun. We're looking forward to saying hello to all of our listeners who are there, and buddies we don't get a chance to see all the time. And hopefully have some interesting games. But this particular tournament is a really interesting one because it does tend to get a real murderer's row of attendees. If
mhm.
listen to the various podcasts talking about this tournament, that tournament, or take a look at who might be winning in some GT here, there, everywhere. A lot of those names you see in a recurring way tend to come to this one. And, it's a big event. I think it's 112 players this particular year, but you will run into a who's who of Warhammer.
Yeah,
Right outside of Boston, and I think it's going to be pretty fun just to see kind of who we end up playing, and whether or not we get some titans of a particular region of the country who are here and just destroy us, or have a really awesome game because we haven't had a chance to play them before. Make a new acquaintance, a friend that way. And of course, it's just great to get together in general. I mean, rare is the moment that we have 2/3 of the triumvirate here in one physical location. So this will
that
this
is
be good.
true. It is a gem in the rough of the separate time zones, isn't
Absolutely, absolutely.
it?
But it'll be a good one, listeners. If you happen to be there and you come up and find either Miles or I, let them know that you listen to the podcast. Let me know you listen to the podcast. You may or may not get a beer out of it,
Yeah,
or
there you
cola
go.
of your choice.
So
High
what he's saying is
probability.
free beer.
Yeah.
Um, and he didn't put a limit on that either. So just continually
No.
go up and ask.
A font of appreciation. We'll call it that. But
So
no, it'll be good. It'll be good. I think what's going to be really fun though is sort of like the list we're bringing, to try to do something interesting. I want to start with Miles. I think it'd be fun to kind of talk as a maybe a before the event and then after the dust settles next time, Matt, on this one.
yeah, I really
So,
just want to assume about his list because there's one thing that he put in there
mhm.
that I was just like, really? Is that even gonna matter?
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. I don't think it's going to matter because all the lists are public now. So everyone who might be listening to this has already seen the list, if they wanted to. So Miles is making the strategically smart decision for a person coming across the Atlantic from his
Hmm.
home in Ireland to not try to bring a whole army, and instead liberate elements of his army from my basement as ground jumping out. I think the one remaining figure from a friend of ours, to come up with a King Broad's Stomp, the new hotness for Sons of Behemat and Army of Renown, and not too tough on the logistical transport. I think it's comprising, of course, King Broad. How can you do it without him? A Kraken Eater, a Gatebreaker, who is in fact the general, carting around the Arcane Tome with a Big Eater command trait, and then a robust battle line comprising 3 Man Crusher Gargants. Now, the last part of his list, maybe a spicy pick, is an Emerald Life Swarm.
Which what is that gonna do? What's he gonna is he gonna just lose track of that and give somebody else D3?
You know what that's going to do? It's going to heal D3 wounds. Critical. Like, make the difference.
I guess on the man crushers it does make sense.
Mm-hmm.
I know he
You got all
loves
3 of them,
those little
maybe.
guys.
Yeah.
Um, so it'll be interesting to I'd love to hear if it comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
The thing for me, and he's been playing with Team Ireland, so I know he's upped his game, so to say. So I'm sure there is a reason behind it. I would love to hear it because I'm just like, don't they have to spread out too much to actually get like full effect of that spell? And There's just a
Maybe.
lot of hmms. Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, it's such a tough army renown. I mean, I haven't played against it directly yet, but just looking at it on paper, I mean, you have King Broad who has like a 5 up ward save just for being near anything. So there's minis. One of them who can kind of be like his friend and make sure he's tough. And he has so many wounds.
Yeah.
He can sort of like do some healing shenanigans if I remember correctly. There might be some stuff in there beyond like the normal.
So maybe he
And I
juices somebody up.
Yeah, and I think he has like a special monstrous action, where one of these gargants can basically do like a kind of a wrap around, ogre charge, where they just like do the 3d6 jump over, whatever they've charged and somewhere else, which is so problematic. You're dealing with a big gargant who all of a sudden has messed up your screen or found that 5-inch spot and started squishing all your important things or killed your character or tagged
Yeah.
that objective with a 25 wound body otherwise would be safe in most circumstances. That seems to have a lot of interesting play, and that's even before you talk about that crazy shooting attack. Do you know about this one, Matt? With this
No.
particular army?
No, lay it on me.
Okay, so I'm gonna make sure I'm looking at it so I don't actually misquote this thing. That would be terrible. But it's sort of this crazy like extra shooting attack that a Gargant can do, where they basically go ahead and just destroy a piece of terrain, and
Oh, and
then
chuck it.
they chuck it. Yeah. So first of all, they can move all the guys who are off of it, like somewhere nearby. Um, so goodbye your garrison, goodbye your cool thing, your defensive, whatever that was kind of like be your contour of the battlefield. But then when they throw it, I think it's something like D6 attacks, each of which does D3 plus 3 damage, and it does a particularly good hit profile, but you kind of do that a lot, so
Yeah.
the shooting potential out of this army is kind of strong, I think, compared to most of the others.
And that's
So
dependable too. I love that +3 damage. Even +2 damage is like, oh man, that's going to be gross no matter what. It's not a D3. D3s are so swingy feeling only when you roll a one.
oh,
but
absolutely.
but every time you roll a one, it outshadows the twos that you get.
It's really
Um,
true. I guess the way it's reading from what I looked up here is I think it might not even be just one. It could be like maybe you get a couple pieces of terrain near the megas, each of them can do it. But
oh,
18-inch range on a 2-up, you pick it up and hurl it across the field. Just remove the thing from the battlefield entire, and you do D3 to anyone standing on it. So that's cool if there was a unit trying to hide there or character. But
mhm.
then D6 attacks, 4 up, 3 up, Ren -2, D3 plus 3. That's a crazy shooting attack. That's just so good.
That's insane. That's something I would never expect to come out of the big boys. And is the range 1 inch for the terrain?
Yeah, 1 inch for terrain, so on it or near it, but like
So you
it's
got
not
like
too
a
hard. Yeah.
well, I mean that's great because you think about the size of the base is plus 18 inches +1. So that's, oh, my dog's going to make some noises because he's sleeping right now.
Oh,
Um,
delightful.
yeah. So that's what at minimum, I think their bases are like 5 inches wide because those are
I
100
think that's
mils, right?
right. I think it's 5 inches wide.
So that's potentially a 24-inch threat
Yeah.
if you are using it correctly. That's really good. That's really scary.
Yeah. I mean, of course, if they get like a hot roll, 6 of those coming across the battlefield, it can do a lot more than clear a light screen. It could be, it
Yeah,
could really mess up
that's
something.
that's a bunch of really sad Dracolines or something, right? At the
Absolutely.
-2, you can actually throw it into them. So that's
Yeah.
really
So
cool. And
see, what did he do? He had big eaters, the command trait. Maybe I can figure out what that does. You can opine on it. I think it's a healing thing, but I'm gonna.
maybe they kill something, they get amount of wounds back or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, you restore D3 wounds to Mega Gargant wholly
Yeah.
within 12 of that journal if they killed any models in the combat phase. So that's every combat phase. So you have Emerald Life Swarms and this thing going off. I mean, you
So
could
he's
do a fair bit.
so he's trying to do the anti kill one a turn list essentially.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if someone doesn't have the proverbial DPS check to take one of these down, could really could really be hard for them to choose the army because it's not going to stay close to death or as close to death with these tools at his disposal. I know that right now that hasn't been as prevalent, like the level of damage that takes to do that isn't in every list. Maybe it will be
Mhm.
soon, or maybe it'll be here today, or we should say on Saturday. But that kind of makes some sense. I mean, it's going to be an interesting time. And you got the little guys to run around and grab objectives, do what they need to do. Some flexibility there.
Somehow every once in a while just punch harder than the other ones, the big ones for some reason. They
Yeah,
just they feel like they run when they run wild.
but
Because
they want to
I
get big
guess it's
someday
probably
too.
because they're great for killing screens off in one go or killing stragglers that are holding on to objectives. The little
Yeah,
ones are really good.
it's sort of funny to think that like the big ones are just little ones who kind of got gigantified more, had a growth spurt or something by like whatever magic makes them big.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's funny to think that there's probably like a whole clutch of those Gargants who are caught in some sort of awkward adolescence between mega and regular size. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know where they go. Maybe some kind of giant high school,
Like
but
they held back a year.
exactly. Have to go to Gur Academy.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a fun one for him, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that in the field.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm
Who are you
definitely
bringing?
going a weird way. So I agonized about this, for such a long time. And, I'll tell you that before I tell you guys this list, that I did decide upon it after having, for whatever practice I was able to get in around, kind of very occasional trips to the game store, not even every week based upon my schedule with, wife and child and all that,
Mhm.
was to play a lot of games with lists that were not this list, to find all those and then choose this totally different list because I wanted to be a chaos hipster.
I mean, you gotta, right?
Yeah,
It, sometimes playing all the lists you don't want to play at a tournament is the best way to get out of it.
it's exactly it. Well, I'll lead up and I'll tell you guys this list, but before I do, I have to sort of contrast it with what I was just tempted to do, and was always sort of thinking back on what I was going to do for this whole time. I thought that I was going to end up doing kind of this hammer and anvil sword and board thing where I was going to bring two or three full units of chaos warriors because I have those now and they're close to being fully painted, plus at least two Chaos Lords who are going to be Cabalists. We were sitting there with Merciless Blizzard inside their bunkers with body cards
Mhm.
because that was going to be great, backed up by maybe some Chosen or Therodons or whatever to do the counterpunch.
Yeah.
That seemed real fun. And I had a couple of variations on that, worked well in practice games, won those games. It was fun, saw that it did work. And it seemed like the way to go because like this is like the moment for the Chaos Lord. He or she or it can be more effective than a normal foot duelist hero because they can become wizards and throw up blizzards. And those
Yep.
models are great.
Yeah. And
But I didn't do that. Oh, continue, Matt. I don't want to cut off your thought.
oh, no. It's also Kabbalists are the best way to actually get something out of any of those like sub, I would call them sub S tier or whatever you want to call for the tier scaling of that book in the book itself, like
Mm-hmm.
Myrmidons. Um, those I just brought a an all Therodon list to a small
Oh, that's fun.
RTT,
Mm-hmm.
using the Myrmidons to make the Therodon's battle line, right? So I think in the end it was 4 units of 6 and 2 units of 3 Therodons,
Mm-hmm.
and like all of those are great. But the thing that makes it great is Kabbalists are now giving the opportunity for a lot of these other like heroes that they're decent for what they are, or they may be subpar. They're now suddenly a wizard and they can contribute in more phases, right?
Absolutely agree. And I've been playing so much Cowboys because of that. Like I love it. It's probably the sub faction I would go to the most.
Yeah.
But I wanted to dare to be different. And I kept trying to fit all the pieces I wanted in to get something kind of unique. And I ended up, in true chaos hipster fashion, going to a subfaction that I didn't think anyone would take, but that worked for what I wanted to do. So I am playing Legion of the First Prince this time.
Interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
break down why and because that's a drastic change. That is a 180.
It is. It is. Well, I'll tell you that, for this one, logic is mainly that I kept trying to get all the pieces into this list that I wanted to have the functions represented and get the stuff done. And then I kept trying to reconfigure until I could sort of get that better version of it because nothing quite was what I wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it came down to the fact that though it doesn't give you a lot, it does let you turn Furies in the battle line.
Oh.
Yeah, which can be pretty huge. And so what I then did is, I had 2 units of Furies, so I made them battle line and part list. I really want to take them. And so it ended up looking something like this. It's Be'lakor, of course, gotta do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Chaos Sorcerer Lord with the Marcus Slanesh and Levitate. And it's an exalted hero chaos, who is, of course, the general, with a command trait that is Master of Magic, and the Arcane Tome. So he
Yeah.
can be a wizard too. And he's a Mark of Chaos Undivided, but go to the battle line. It says 2 units of Furies and a unit of Unmade. Then the spice in the list is 10 Chaos Chosen with a Mark of Slanesh and Source of Banner being the Banner Screaming Flesh. You'll love this, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
6 Ogroid Therodons, freshly painted
Yes.
tonight, a little basing to be done. But they are the Mark of Chaos Undivided, reinforced. So of course they're six strong. A
Mm-hmm.
Mind Stealer Sphere Ranks, Chaos War Shrine with the Mark of Slanesh and Curse, and 11 Blitzbarb Archers.
Nice. So, did the Therodons have the axes or the shields?
The big axes.
Big
Definitely big
axes.
axes.
So, remember your Eye of the Gods
Mm-hmm.
all the
They can get
time.
all sorts of fun for doing pretty much anything.
Oh, they get brutal after getting Eye of the Gods off
Mm-hmm.
a couple of times.
The real fun thing with them is they're the unit which get to take advantage of kind of the one other interesting thing that Legion of the First Prince gives you, outside of like the drawback of not getting all the other cool stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically you can pick an undivided unit in every one of your hero phases and let it get another chaos mark temporarily in addition to the other one. So if they need to get across the board, take advantage of the shrine, well, they can do Slanesh. If they need to be tough because they're fighting something, they can be Nurgle. If they need to just have a whole lot of extra attacks and they're close enough, they can be Corn. There's really no reason not to.
That's really good. That's really, really good.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
probably
see.
going to catch some people off guard, I would say.
Not if they're a podcast listener.
This is true.
That's true. But it's I'm looking forward to playing it. I mean, like it's the only configuration that gave me this level of flexibility. And yeah, it hurt to lose some of the Kabbalah stuff, but I realized that I'm saying no to sort of the trap, which is trying to just blizzard everything. It's so fun when it works, and it's so frustrating when it doesn't. This is
Yep.
not a blizzard list. It's whatever, it's spellcasting savant. So the little exalted hero, has his job. Not obvious there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the important spells still have Be'lakor, I still have Chaos Sorcerer Lord. And where it comes to like that extra flexibility, having Furies there to run around and do crazy stuff, having a Mindstealer Sphere ranked to be able to potentially make people just ASL as is only appropriate and thematic for the podcast as needed.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good. And I have 11 Bliss Barbs. I can project power in a way most Chaos armies cannot when they're slaves to darkness in front of their name.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a very fluid list. Like and do you think you set out to do that? I know you have like limited time cuz like Jack, unlike me, has a life. um and responsibilities and such. And it seems like there's a lot of list building theory here, but this is definitely something that like you've culminated because all of those units, especially the unmade, you've been playing the unmade forever.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
It seems like kind of like a, okay, this is a unit that I really actually, I love how it works, and I have a lot of experience with it. So it seemed like you were picking dependables, and then like Therodons, I know you've been leaning into more. Have you gotten practice games with them
I've
in or?
practiced with them, in their various states of unpainted. Yeah. I mean, to answer your question for sure, but just on the Therodons, yeah, I played unit of three, so that does. I played units of six to see what that does. Kind of gotten a sense for strengths and weaknesses. How they're a big chunky hammer, but they're not chosen, but they're still
Mhm.
so good for their points.
Oh, they're so
Um,
good.
and
So
and I guess to get back to sort of the question you had is yeah, this particular list is a bit in some ways of culmination because it's not a wild departure from the stuff that I was running before because I can only paint so much in the time I have,
mhm.
and it's sort of like adding onto that and reconfiguring slightly. Like I knew I was going to use the 10 shows, and I've been enjoying them all year. I like the shrine version with them, and I'd had those Therodons kind of on the docket for quite some time, so I knew that they were likely to be the core of it. A few events ago, I was bemoaning, I think even on our very podcast here, how having
Mhm.
one hammer, one identifiable hammer without a backup meant that if something went awry, the opponent let out a sigh of relief and just be able to kind of do their thing. Well, having a backup that can really hit hard is super good.
Yeah.
And then finding the points to retain some flexibility to be different places or score points or sit on circles, seems to be good. And for what I had going on, the Furies are really interesting because they're so good. And I had sort of access to the six of one type and the six kind of older model ones. And so I said, these could do a lot of jobs.
Mhm.
This is not too much of a stretch. And so when I was trying to figure out what in the remaining time I had to paint after it kind of like the maybe false enthusiasm, feeling like I had a month and a half or a month or whatever kind of faded and realized that is only a discrete amount of time. I wasn't going to get my six Vanguard from zero to done in that time. That they seem like a fun way to go, especially when you consider battle tactics. So I
Yeah.
buckled down to do that, and it felt good to kind of do the Chaos Undivided with the Legion of the First Prince, but of course maintain my omnipresent Slaneshi theme, the Bliss Barbs, and some of the other stuff.
Yeah, nice. It, and I love that their battle line. I actually never really realized that. This is good old not reading my rules.
Oh, only
Um,
conditional, only conditional battle line. You have to take Legion to do it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that where it may not like seem like much of a departure, it's very interesting because you're flipping the kind of style of play on its head, right?
Mhm.
With battle line now being able to charge, you have a battle tactic from them, and all they have to do is charge. And a hero can stay in combat if they can stay in combat. So you've got a battle
Oh,
tactic right there when the super squishy guys run away, right?
oh, absolutely. If, like, for instance, if
Very
if I
cool.
have them charge like the scariest thing in the army, and Bellicor, in theory, because he's resilient enough, right? Charge something he's not going to kill is not going to kill him, and say, okay, first action, Fury scamper away, go 12 inches, and annoy them by sitting on a circle that they don't
Mm-hmm.
want. I'm still an objective by going 24, probably 30 inches in a turn, right? 12
Yeah.
inch move, 6 inch charge, 12-inch retreat,
Mm-hmm.
and I've also got a battle tactic, which is normally a bit more difficult
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
sacrificial.
I mean, that's brilliant. So like, um, and the way that you got there, how did you get there? Were you just like, oh wait, I can just do this from like just looking at lists over and over and over, looking at your sub allegiance, or was it like, did you hear something? Were you reading up on it
Really just
through
thinking
like,
about it.
yeah?
I mean, maybe somebody got a bug me or somehow. I mean, I know they were cool from looking at the battle scroll, but I think what really made me think about it were two things. One, in the new GHB we're in, right? With that change to six models strong, being able to string out,
Mm-hmm.
they're really good screeners. We're just before they were not because they're six model units. So prior to that, you'd have to do like a little 5-man kind of block or whatever. And so they'd be a cluster and they'd run around, be annoying, be good for battle attacks and stuff, but they weren't going to block anything.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now, they're on kind of, I think, 32 mils or whatever. And you can just make a nice big line and it's a super mobile line because of that, like, big move. So right there,
Yeah.
that seems like a huge gain in utility. And then, the other kind of part of the moment there was just reading through, like the various lists I was trying to make and realizing that the very common element, in all of the different fun versions I, enjoy playing or would maybe want to play for Kabbalists or like Host the Everchosen with a lot of these same elements was a sort of tax in the battle line. It wasn't that they were bad units. I didn't enjoy using them, but like if I have to take those two other slots and I have to fill them with like Chaos Warriors or two other cultist units, unless they're dedicated cultist units with a specific purpose, it's just a little bit of extra fat in the list.
Yeah.
Like I oftentimes will take the Darkwood Savagers, who I love, but they're kind of like a random block of 10 dudes are particularly tough and they have some utility and they can maybe do some damage, but they're not likely to do much of anything on their own.
Yeah.
Um, Combine that, with maybe the other slot being Chaos Warriors, great, but I'll always take points, or even at 180,
Mm-hmm.
or or something else, like maybe Corpus Cabal, whatever. There's utility, but from what I had painted up, it was unlikely to be the best of those, right? Like if I had tons of Corpus Cabal and Splinter Fang painted, maybe that would be more of a consideration there. But from looking at just how tight the points were, realizing I could sort of free up that 270 points right there, I just made a lot of other things possible.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have to sacrifice the core heroes or like the damage dealing hammers or the other things. And the more I looked at it, it seems pretty fragile, and it definitely is more so. But each of those Furies has 2 wounds,
Yep.
and because they can retreat from combat, they have sort of a pseudo vulnerability if you don't choose to strike them first, or someone else, for whatever reason, has to proc and strike last. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's too hard for anyone looking at the list to see that if that Mindster Spheranx is sort of nearby, you charge them with your God unit and you have your bravery equaled or beaten, then the Furies scamper away and you have literally not even the gain of having killed the chaff screen. It's still there.
They're actually like outside of, well, not even that, right? So like they're 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 deceivably tougher than they should be just because of that extra wound, right? Um,
Yeah, oh yeah.
but
I mean,
like the great thing is like they have such a low, I think they have a non-existent save, don't they? Yeah, they
I
don't
think
have
it's
a
6
save.
up or
Is
something,
it
like
6 up?
terrible bravery, but
I
yeah.
might be thinking of the hate chickens, the Raptor X. I use the Raptor X a lot.
Those are
um
fun.
yeah, I still don't have like a monster that works in tandem with them to get the best out of that war scroll, but
Mm-hmm.
the the fact that they have such a low save means that like now like half of the armies out there, like are they really going to waste their like actually came up. I had somebody who was playing with a unit of them. They were playing 12, which
Mm-hmm.
now after listening to your reasoning, I think 6 may have been the better. Splitting them up may have been better, but I think they wanted a 1 drop or something. But anyways,
Mm-hmm.
the like you don't want to dedicate anything to them because you know they're just going to fall over. Like, and so it's almost like any damage output that you have that isn't plink damage, you're kind of like looking at them going, is it worth my time even like shooting at these? Because maybe I'll miss 2 and then they'll have a couple of wounds and then they'll just be gone and just rally later. And they kind of play a special mind game unless you have like a whole bunch of fusiliers or something, right? They're just
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, if you have
like,
like
why would I
so much
waste my time
shooting.
shooting that? Like, so
Mm-hmm.
it's a very interesting dynamic list. I really like that. I
Thanks. I
I'm
mean,
I'm looking forward to the breakdown on it.
I can't wait to play it. I mean, with pretty much no practice games in this, except maybe me and Miles get a chance to do one prior to going to the tournament on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday. I don't think I've honed it to razor's edge, but I'm looking forward to it. I can confidently say though that I'll win between 0 and 5 games.
100%.
Yeah. No, I want to try it out, and I'm glad I'm bringing it. Everything's done. Really, just have to do some basing for the Therodons and the second unit of Furies, but everything, it's all well in hand. The one funny thing though is I was looking at the list. Now that everything's been revealed, and I was certain I would be the only Legion of the First Prince pick,
Hmm.
but I was not. There are 11 Slaves to Darkness
Wow.
players at this event, and there's
Well,
one
that is a
other
big.
guy who I think is playing the same sub faction. So I can't even take the hipster crown.
I mean, you you can you can you don't need the crown, but you could have like a cool, like fedora.
Yeah, get another one for them, but yeah, be
Cool
good.
fedora for every model.
Exactly. I do worry a little bit about the shooting gallery stuff, though. It's got to be really interesting. It's other high numbers of factions, 10 carotid overlords.
That's I there was a Caradon Overlords player at the Hawkwim tournament,
Mhm.
that I had the joy of fighting, and I will always forget that they have that 4+ rally, and it's so nuts. It's so nuts. Recursion has just gone insane.
It's really true. I mean, well, let's talk about that for a second, because I mean, KO are top of mind, with that stuff. I feel like it's tricky because it's conditional, right? They don't always have it. Don't they just have it if sub article amendment B was
Yeah,
chosen? And there's so many of those that it's kind of like dense. I feel like I need to go read all of them again so I can identify them at a glance.
yeah. It's almost like keeping up with the intricacies of the rules now is a second job, I think, on some of these.
Or degree.
Yeah, right. More power to those who can. But it it
Exactly.
is it is very surprising, seeing what KO can do now. They feel a lot better than the last book, specifically. Because before that, first edition book was just weird in general.
Hmm.
Worked in some ways and then just did not work at all in others. And then second edition book was a little bit over the hill in some areas.
Hmm.
And then this
Hmm.
one feels very balanced, but also terrifying when it goes off.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's really great I've had a chance to play them. It's one of those things where you can't think about it like a normal army.
Yeah.
You really can't. And that scary shooting, has always been their hallmark. But now it's also been paired with like some surprisingly scary fighting if they want to go with certain builds. So
Hmm.
definitely a puzzler.
Yeah,
And
those bubble boys are no joke.
oh yeah, sort of like have an interesting style to them.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing what they do if I run into one of them. I mean, sort of going to be gotta be one of those like, all right, let's hope that my memory of this serves. I don't like jump left based upon some instinct, but I should have jumped right.
Well,
Yeah,
you have a 1 in 10 chance apparently of finding out. So,
exactly. But no, it'll be interesting. They're doing with this tournament, kind of the callback to what you were talking about Hawkwam. I think smart things, real fun things, and that they have a terrain map, so you know what your board is supposed to look like. Things need to be shifted around a little bit. And they also have, the missions, already kind of disclosed, so you know what
mhm.
you're sort of expecting. And I could see, depending on what you get, if it's like Nexus of Power or whatever, like or like the whatever it is, like the Pulse. Or if you're like in the Pulse, a little bit
Oh
better
yeah, the
than if you're on,
pulse.
like the collapsing nexuses, or like the ice fields or something. But
Ice
with them,
fields with them would be a little rough.
yeah. But we shall see. It's funny, maybe a good segue, Matt, because Miles and I will have to, take some videos, say hello to some folks, regale everyone, in the next episode how this all went as the dust settles, probably with
Mhm.
King Broad standing on top. Uh, is maybe we can sort of introduce a couple potential sub segments we might start rolling out, to kind of intersperse or add into some of our normal content, just because it's fun to kind of revisit certain subtopics,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
come up for folks, every once in a while. One is going to be the Tao of Dadhammer, talking about how it is, to try to play Warhammer, competitive or fun or otherwise, when you're dealing with fatherhood, as a factor. Tips, tricks, trials, travails. I certainly allude to them many a time, in
Yeah.
our regular sessions, how to squeeze in a game when you can only get to the shop every so often, or how to deal with painting, when you have to wait to the wee hours of the morning to, to get started, or really anything under the sun. So that'll be something coming soon. But even in the lead up to this particular tournament, I was definitely, you know, very much in the mode of having to work around the other realities of life with that,
Yeah.
where there were definitely a couple of days in my sort of painting journey where I would be way farther ahead, done on to other stuff, maybe able to put on some finishing touches. But for the fact that, late bedtimes or toddler who's unwilling to actually go to sleep at anything remotely like her bedtime meant that I basically just lay down on the couch and passed out rather than do anything productive. And it was like lost time. That is not an uncommon occurrence when one is moving around these fixtures.
That makes sense. I can barely keep up with the dog. I could not imagine the upgrade, the large upgrade to to that. Um, but I think that'll be an interesting segment because essentially what we just did just now is talk about all of the decisions that you made to go to that tournament, right? So we can we can kind of break these down and really get into them, like you know find those trusted units, find the reason why uh changing to a different sub allegiance was like the better idea. And honestly, it sounds like a more fun list to play too, right? Like, so making the most out of the time that you have, that just sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun when we start doing that.
I think so too. It really is meant to address, the meta game around the game when it comes to dealing with, life factors like that. And then so both the fun and the trials and the travails that they come along with it.
Yeah. And then we're also in talks with a friend of ours who's been around the YouTube space, and I think he's even, no, I'm just gonna say YouTube space for a while.
Mhm. He lives there
Who's
now.
Yeah, he lives there. Actually, I think he's further south than you, a little further south of you. Uh, Rocco, you boy, should be coming on at some point soon. We'll start talking about those kind of tips and tricks that you can use as a player in game to like up the chances of making the right decision, right? Having the knowledge of where to pile in and when to pile in, what unit to
Mhm.
use, So I'm really looking forward to that because he has an amazing wealth of knowledge and um, just a swell guy, just a very swell guy.
Absolutely. Well, this is good stuff, Matt. I think that we haven't done too bad for just the two of us here. Maybe we should plug a few of the usual things. Everyone has made it this far. Don't forget to, go like, subscribe, if you're so inclined or inspired, subscribe to the Patreon, and the heavenly vault of the Discord will open to you and you can come and hang out with us there. Uh, there
Indeed.
are a couple of cool things on there, certainly more to come soon, but, one of the benefits, that is involved with that is, some resources that Matt and I and Miles curate that can be helpful in some ways.
Oh,
Some of which
that's
you can find elsewhere and are more readily accessible, but some are locked behind those gates. One that you might like though and can use right now is Matt's actually put together sort of a gaming aid. It's sort of like a pacing sort of a YouTube channel you can just put up to tell you when in your game, you've basically taken too much time. It's set to a normal AOS tournament game, and it just displays, where you should be. Yeah,
yeah.
so
And
pull it up on your
so
phone and you're trying to practice. give it a glance, and figure out if you're behind schedule, and it'll be an easier way to quickly attune to that, with your friend as you guys both try to get ready for something, or maybe there's a chess clock, or you just don't want to be, finding yourself at turn 3 with dice are down.
Yep, it's one thing. As a lot of the community in my area moves to chess clocks, it's just a great thing to have up. We have a couple of places and venues that we've played in where they've had, the TV in the store is suddenly turned into a timer, and it's like really janky and it's never set up correctly. And so I was like, you know what? Let's get a tournament timer. Calls out each round, the approximate length of the rounds are all broken up, and even setup time, which if you come to one of my tournaments, you don't have to worry about.
Absolutely. Matt,
But
definitely link that one in the show notes for everybody. I think that'll
most
get a kick out of
definitely.
it.
And we're probably going to release a couple of different ones. I'm making individual ones for people in our Discord. With I got to write music for them and everything, but it's a fun task, good challenge. But we'll probably be putting out some more ones, probably with actual sound timers on the YouTube video, and leave us a comment on it. Let me know if you want one without music and just a call out, or vice versa. Let us know. We'd love to create more for you. Also,
Absolutely.
it is always strikes late, and so if our sultry, sleepy voices haven't lulled you to sleep, I want to say thank you. that was going to be my last word of the.
I know, but you mess up, so now I have the last word. Enjoy the episode, everyone out there.
Damn.
This is ASL signing off.